episode number 234 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is Vanessa Gillis Phelps. Vanessa is a lesbian wife and mama to two amazing donor-conceived kids. After going through her own struggles of trying to conceive, she saw a need within her community for support and guidance on the conception journey. She is an LGBTQ fertility coach and the creator of Queer Fertility. She has helped countless LGBTQ folks around the globe realize that anything is possible when it comes to creating the family of their dreams. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. So happy to have you on, Vanessa.
Thank you, Michelle. It's an honor to be here.
So I was just talking to you in the pre-talk. I'm going to give a little summary of what we just talked about. And I was talking about how what you're doing is so needed. And it's also very rare. You just don't see a lot of people supporting the LGBTQ community. So first of all, welcome. And secondly, I would love for you to share your background and your own journey and how you got into doing this work.
Yeah, thank you. So it started, my wife and I, we were ready to start our family. And we thought, like probably everyone else, like, oh, first try, we'll get pregnant, no big deal. And just even starting out of the gate, we quickly realized it's a different journey when you are having to purchase sperm and even find your sperm donor. There's just a lot of these extra things to consider that we never even thought about. And then, of course, there was the question for us of would our fertility doctors be, okay, like comfortable supporting families like us, couples like us. And it was just a lot to get started out of the gate when we had some straight friends that were also going through infertility. And we just noticed the little differences of things that they didn't have to really deal with versus we were dealing with, and not having that support as well. Became very overwhelming very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And so let's break that down. Like, obviously, you have to get a sperm donor, and then having to do IUI versus combining that with sex. So that's kind of like you're already limited to the times that you're having the IUI. And so,
Yes.
what were some of the things that the challenges that you came across?
Yeah. So the first thing was the insurance piece. Most insurances only cover IVF if you are trying at home naturally for at least a year. And that doesn't include
Wow.
miscarriages. And so out of the gate, we're accumulating this debt that just, for the basic testing, again, sperm, purchase that's out of pocket. And so starting out where our friends, they had most of their IVF stuff covered. We were like, okay, $10,000 in, and we haven't even had our first try yet. So that part was, that was overwhelming. Um, but even just, when we were trying to get pregnant and I had a miscarriage, um, just feeling like I was really alone, even though my wife was going through the same, she was there with me, but she wasn't the one carrying. And so not having anyone else to really talk to get advice and support from, um, it felt very isolating at times. And that's not how anyone should start their fertility journey.
Absolutely. And it's actually a very common thing that I hear over and over again. I work with so many different patients, so many different walks of life. And that's one thing when it comes to miscarriage, it just feels so isolating because people go through it alone. And any loss is hard, but it just seems to be almost like brushed off, even medically. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, let's try again. And I always suggest a lot of times for people to do a ceremony or do something because it's sacred. It's
Yes.
sacred. It should be given the attention that it needs. And a lot of times it really gets brushed off. And it really is too dear to get brushed off. And it is a loss. It's a real legitimate loss.
Yes, absolutely. Um, the other thing too that was really hard was because going through a fertility clinic, that was our only option. That was the only way that we knew, obviously, because trying at home wasn't an option. So then I started to question, like, well, should we try? Are there other methods out there? Could we try at home with a known donor? What is that whole process even like trying to
Yeah,
ask a
that's a
friend
good
or
question.
find someone?
Yeah.
And so it was there was so much. And of course we did go on to get pregnant. We have two kiddos, both donor conceived, thankfully. Things worked out in our favor. It was important for us to have biological siblings. We wanted to use the same donor for both kids. That was the thing too. How many vials do we purchase? Because when we were trying for our son, we got an email. I think I was like two IUIs in the process. And we got an email from the bank saying, hey, your donor's going off the market. If you want, any extra vials, you need to purchase them now. I don't know if you know, the price of sperm at that time was around $1,000 per vial, which is one try a month. And we're like, well, okay, here comes some more debt. Like, how do we know how many vials to purchase? How many tries is it going to take in the future? And so my wife and I joke and say that for Christmas we bought each other sperm
I
because
love it.
it was so much. And
Yeah.
so now on the other end of the journey, being able to teach couples, like there's a much easier way. There are so many options out there based on your budget, based on your family dynamics. Like there's
Mhm.
just a lot more opportunity, and being able to share that is incredible.
And you guys did this you were able to do it with IUI?
Yes, yes, we
Okay,
were.
awesome. Well, that's lucky, because it could be
Yes,
really, really tough.
that was another thing too. When we went in for our first appointment with our OB, I had stage 4 endometriosis. I didn't know that. I'm thinking I'm going in for a regular appointment. And he was like, it is so severe. He said, there's no way you can have biological children. He said, I'm sorry to say that. And he said, there's no way. He said, if by chance you are, able to have a miracle baby, he called it, he said, it'd have to be through IVF. He said, IUI is not going to be possible.
Hmm.
And so, and going into an appointment, you don't really expect that. And so again, we're like, okay, well, we know IVF at least starts around 20,000. It was like, it just kept adding up and adding up. Um, but, I felt one thing that I, recommend to my clients is like always check within, like go within, kind of see like what feels in alignment for you, what feels best for you. And I just felt this little whisper, something saying, like, you know what, you haven't tried, just try it. What's the worst that happens? And then you can move on to IVF if needed. So we tried IUI and it was a process. It took time, but it worked for both of our kiddos.
Amazing. And you use the same doctor?
So the OB, who was the one that told me that it wasn't going to happen, we went to a fertility doctor, and it was the same
I
doctor for
see.
both kiddos.
Okay, got it.
He
Yeah,
was
I
thankful. He
hear
was
that
supportive.
so much, and I love that you just said go within because that could literally save or change the trajectory of your whole path, your whole journey,
Yes,
and your journey to getting your kids. It's insane how many people get convinced that they can't do something when they actually can.
yes. I think we get, I don't know what's the word, complacent or comfortable or dependent on what the doctors say. And I think doctors are wonderful. They're a gift. They help in so many ways, but we also have to learn to tune into our bodies, to tune
Hmm.
into our babies. Like,
Yep.
what way do they want to come into this world, and how can we best support them as they come earthside? So,
Absolutely. And to also realize that doctors are only human and
yes.
and they're amazing at so many things, but they are human and they have opinions and if you feel within yourself and I so agree with you on this. I just think it's such an important point and I'm so happy you talked about that inner whisper because that inner whisper means something and it's intelligent and it's so important to listen to.
Yes, yeah. And now, even I have so many couples that come to me and same thing. They're like, Vanessa, we're told IVF is the only way, and we just don't have the budget for that. And they think that they don't get to have their dream of becoming parents. And I love being able to say, well, it's okay, you have options, and taking them down the route of, all right, if you want to find a known donor, if you don't have someone like within your family that you want to ask or in your friend circle, there are Facebook groups for that. There's an app for that. There is so like you
It's
have
amazing. Yeah.
options.
I
Yes.
think that that's the biggest thing is that when people enter the fertility journey, it's like they feel like they have too many options and too little options at the same time because they don't know what would fit them. They get very overwhelmed, and then sometimes they get told like, no, it just doesn't, it won't happen unless you do this X, Y, and Z. And then the more they dig, and this is why a lot of people going through the fertility journey decide to be fertility coaches because they're like, oh my God, if I only knew this when I
Yes.
first started. And this
Yes.
is why I just want to scream this from the rooftops. I want everyone to know that they don't have to suffer like I did. And I think that
Yes.
that's the biggest thing, right? It's like, I don't want people to go through what I did. I want to like change that for them.
Yes. I always say that I give people the shortcut approach to fertility because, especially like in our community, um, I feel like these, the queer couples that find me, they assume they are infertile. They assume there is a problem. And yes, maybe some things come up down the road, but to start with, there's nothing wrong with them. But
Mm-hmm.
they take on this mindset. And when you adopt that mindset of something's wrong, it just kind of festers and it doesn't work out so good. Versus if you say, okay, you know what? I know I'm healthy, my body is healthy, I can do this. Oh, now Vanessa's presenting me with these options. It's like a game changer for
Oh,
them.
it really is. 100%. I mean, you have the site, you already know the terrain. So I think
Yes.
having that and being able to see like what's out there and not feel so, because it really does feel at first like you're blind. You just don't know, like it's the dark. You're walking into this big unknown.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so speaking of blind, actually, I have a couple that I'm working with who they are both blind.
Oh, wow.
And they went the route of purchasing sperm through a sperm bank. And right on our first call, I offer just a quick clarity call to see, are we the right fit? Um, and they were telling me the timing of their insemination. We know that frozen sperm only lives in your body for up to 12 hours. So we really, really have to be specific with the timing. So we're tracking cycles, tracking ovulation, all these good things. Um, and they were just missing the mark. They were like, Vanessa, we don't understand what we're doing wrong. Is it me? My body's broken. Just really beating themselves up about it. And they were just like with a few hours off. And I'm like, this is it. Like, you guys are so close. We just need to adjust a few things. And it made all the difference for them. And so, just being able to share those little tidbits, like, I love it. I love to help them.
You know what's priceless is having somebody believe in you when you're at a point where, because I really think that that makes a difference when you're going to all these different places and looking, where numbers is the big thing. And when you have somebody by your side that knows the terrain and also believes in your ability to get through it, I feel like that in itself is a game changer.
Yes. Yeah. Um, and actually, sorry to just circle back about the couple where they're both blind. They went to a fertility doctor, and the doctor was really reluctant to help them because he was like, I'm not sure with you both being blind that you would be suitable to raise a child. That would be really hard. And she was like, first of all, that's not why we're here. We're just here for kind of a basic consultation. She said, but even if our child was blind, she said, if anyone is suitable, like both of us, we grew
Yeah.
up this way, we would know. And so it was just like,
That's crazy. That
it's,
definitely that crosses a boundary.
right? I know. And so it's just, a lot of times it's feeling validated, and we know fertility doctors, like you said, they're human. They do their best, but they're human. And so just to have, someone validate for the first time is really special. It's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Um,
I really
yeah.
do feel like it's so funny because when I went to school for Chinese medicine, one of my teachers said, if you truly intently listen to your patients, they can heal before you put one needle in. Like you're already healing
I
them
love that.
just by that. And I was like, yes, that makes sense. They're like, because immediately people's nervous system shift. They just feel seen
Mm.
and heard. That's really important. And especially so with the LGBTQ community, I mean, how do you get insurance to change? Like, is there something that people can do to change that? Because that's, and they shouldn't put that kind of standard on everybody because you can't possibly try for a year before going and getting,
Yeah.
like, it's just, it's not fair. Is there anything that can be done about that?
Fortunately, we've come a long way just in society in general with acceptance, but we're just not there yet in the healthcare system. Um, and even when it comes to like the purchase of sperm, I've been coaching for a few years now, and I've only had two clients ever that their employer has covered, like through their insurance, has covered the sperm purchase, which is huge. Like
Yeah,
that's
it
a
is
huge
huge.
win. So I get really excited when I hear that. I'm like, you don't have to pay out of pocket. And so that's really exciting. But I mean, even just like little things like starting there, that would be great if we could get
Or some kind of
some
foundation,
percentage.
right? Or some kind of
Yes.
foundation nonprofit where it's supportive. Like
Yes.
it shouldn't be. It should be the insurance. They should look at each individual
Yes.
needs, separately because it's just not the same. It's not a fair
Yes.
expectation. So hopefully that'll change and the system could be a little bit more inclusive.
Inclusive, yes. I mean, it is my hope that one day it will, especially as, it's becoming more common, for queer families to have babies. But yeah, even, there was someone that I knew, we didn't end up working together, but she had multiple miscarriages and
Hmm.
still they would not count that as one IUI because it just wasn't the way that they coded it in the system. They're like, no, that doesn't count. So you still are starting at square one. And so it just felt like she would never get it covered. And it's interesting too, like there are different companies who, for example, like Tractor Supply, there's this whole Facebook group that's dedicated to if you work for a Tractor Supply company, they will cover your fertility. I think it's like right after 20 days of employment. And so I have some clients that go that route because they're like, hey, if I can work 10 hours a week there, even though I would never want to work there, but they're going to
Yeah.
cover my
I heard
IVF and cover,
Starbucks. I
yeah,
heard they give really
Starbucks.
good benefits.
Yes.
I've had patients say that they actually quit their job and worked there for a little bit.
Yes. Yep.
I was like, wow, I didn't realize that their benefits were that good. It would be really. I'm hoping that, and I do see it moving in the direction where they are so, because they didn't even support any fertility. So
Hmm.
now we're starting to get somewhere a little bit.
Yes. Yes. I mean, just anytime I hear about those little, I call them little fertility hacks. I'm like, okay, Starbucks, great. Okay, Tractor Supply Company,
Yeah.
great. Okay, Google, great. I mean, Google's a little different. But just anytime I hear those, I'm like writing that down and saving that, because sometimes we do have to get a second job or we do have to go these different routes that we never thought we would have to take.
Yeah.
But, we do what we need to do to become parents. At the end
Oh,
of the day, that's what it comes down
oh
to.
yeah, and I'll tell you, when it comes to my patients, I love them so much. I really do feel like just such a connection to my community. I've become friends with them. Like I really do
Yes.
have a personal connection with my patients, and I could tell you this: they are the most compliant, easy to work with because they will really embrace anything that I talk to them about. They're so dedicated, and I say that like that's where I feel like parenthood begins. It begins before conception. It really does. It's
Yes.
that calling that you will do anything for a child you haven't conceived yet, because so you're already a parent in a way. Like you're really, that part of you has been, activated.
Yes. Yeah, that's funny you say that. There's an email that I sent out last week saying, just a reminder that they are already a parent in their hearts, just like I
Yeah.
was before I became physically pregnant. And I know the same is true for them too.
Yeah.
And just, reminding them of that hope and what's possible. And it's going to look so different than you originally thought, and that's okay, but they'll get there. I know it.
And do you have any interesting stories? I know you mentioned a couple.
Oh my gosh, so many.
Yeah. So
So many.
share
Yeah.
something that comes to mind.
Okay, so the first one that comes to mind, so part of what I do as well is I'm a spirit baby intuitive.
Ooh, I
I
love that. Oh,
notice,
that's good. You're
yes.
holding out. I love talking about spirit babies. And you were
Yes,
talking a little bit about that.
yes, I love it too. It's something I definitely felt, when we were trying to get pregnant, I didn't know what it was. So I was like, oh, like this is different. Am I making it up? Is it all me? Is it in my head? And as I began to work with a fertility coach, which was just fate, that I stumbled across that because I got to a point I was so rock bottom in my journey. I was like, I need something. Like, I don't know what it is, but I need something. And, fertility coaching came about, and I was like, oh, like it just lit me up. Something inside of me was just lit up. And then, I started to explore, like, oh, there is such a thing as spirit babies. Like, oh, what is that? And so now being able to teach that to my clients, like, such a comfort for them to be like, wow, I can really like tune into what their personality is like. And, I had one couple in particular, they were like, can I find out what their favorite color is? I'm like, absolutely. If you want, yeah, anything you want to know. And they're like, they were really skeptical. They're like, okay, well, tell us how to do this and we'll give it a try. And I was like, okay. So I gave them the steps, kind of the formula that I use. And within a few days, they messaged me. They're like, Vanessa, like, this is so crazy. Like, and come to find out, I was like, so I'm curious, what's the favorite color? They're like, it's red. They're like, I hate red, but baby loves red. And sure enough, baby just it tends to go for all toys and things that are red. And it's just so
Oh, that's so
sweet.
crazy. That's so cool. See, those signs,
Yeah.
they're there. I feel like when you're open to them, they come more. And that's
Yes.
something that I even notice with my patients. And what's interesting about just mediumship in general, like people typically think of a medium as somebody who connects with people after they pass, the souls. But it's
Mm.
almost like the same thing, but like on a different timeline.
Yeah. Hmm.
For spirit babies, it's like the before, not the after.
Yes. I can always tell, like, because it's something, so it's one of the modules that I cover in my fertility course that I offer. And people are they're not always skeptical. They're curious, but they're a little like, this is different. Okay, what is this? But when they try it and they see how easy it is, they're like, oh, I thought I would have to be like some super psychic to do this. I'm like, everybody has access to it. I always say it's kind of like tuning into a radio frequency, right? The waves are always there, the frequency is always there. We just have to kind of fine tune it, dial in to really accept and hear the messages that are coming through. But one story, this wonderful couple, I was leading them through like a visualization. And in this particular one, I felt like their baby wanted to give them a little gift, like wanted to share something with them. And so I was leading them through it. And at the end, I said, so I'm curious, did baby give you her gift? I felt it was a little girl. They were like, yes. And so the one shared, she was like, it was a ladybug. And then her partner, she was like, almost like in tears. She was like, I got a ladybug too. And it was
Oh,
just like,
cool.
it was so special for them to connect over that. And again, they're like, I never thought something like that would be possible. And so it just makes the journey a little more bearable, a little easier. Everything starts to kind of flow and get into alignment, which you know, is what we want for them.
Yeah, it's
So,
really true. Like, I think that just people tend to put a lot of doubt. That's really what blocks you. And I agree with you that everybody has it. And we've all had moments of intuition where we just like knew without any logic. That's usually like how you know, because it's not like logically you could figure it out. It just landed, and it was almost like it defied odds. Usually those signs defy the odds. It's almost like too out of
Yes.
left field to even make sense on this reality plane that we're living in. And so when you have those are like legit signs. And I just think that also as humans, we have like so much more potential than we realize. And I think to myself, like when you were talking about the blind couple and how the doctor immediately said that, I was thinking, well, they use different senses. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they can't live and like get around. And, it's interesting
Yes.
how people have such a preconceived notion of how you're supposed to be in order to like live. And it's how that gets projected. But like, I think that one of the problems with humanity is like faith, having faith in like, ourselves and our abilities and like being able to see things that are way more vast than just our eyes, what our eyes can see.
Yes, absolutely. That's so when I teach couples, I use a four-step process. I touch on the spiritual side of things, the physical side of fertility, the mental and emotional part of fertility. And I find that when couples, when we work together, they're really strong in one area, but maybe they're not so strong in the spiritual side. So like let's say, and I'm sure you've had the same experience too, they're really great at like tracking everything that they eat, making sure they get all their vitamins and nutrients and all the things, right? But then when I bring up the topic of like spirit baby, are you connecting with your child? They're like, well, what is that? Like, what do you mean? And it's like, okay, let's strengthen that muscle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or they're really strong in it's usually the physical. People want to like be able to do all the things, check off,
The
on the
measuring, the
list.
measuring, the
Yes.
numbers, the analytical.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. And so, I'll say like, okay, well, how are you supporting yourself mentally, emotionally? They're like, what are you talking about? Well, I do yoga. I'm like, that's great. That's a really good step. But what else can you do? Are you writing letters to your baby? Do you sing them songs? Do you put your hands on your belly and just kind of move and dance and sway? And, just kind of like little things to get them back into their bodies and get them back into alignment, back into flow. Um, Even just having them put their hand on their belly is like a really uncomfortable thing sometimes. But then it's like reconnecting them with their womb. I call it the wisdom of the womb, just
Yes,
reconnecting
love
with
that.
that. It's so special. It's so special. That was one thing that really attracted me to the work that you do, is because I remember the podcast episode that you did with Robin, where you were talking about like the mind body connection. Not a lot of people know what that is or even
Yeah,
talk about that.
yeah.
And so to get my clients back, where their mind is connecting with their body, all the pieces are working together, like that's the main goal. That's what we're working on.
Absolutely. It's so important because it's an asset that we almost don't realize we have. And what I love to do actually with people who love measuring and numbers,
Yeah.
which I totally love because I think we need all types of minds. And what I do is I use a lot of studies, and I love that
Mm,
because there's this book which I think you'd love. It's called Why Woo Woo Works. I think
mm,
that's what it's called, but it's basically
mm.
the guy cites so many studies on like everything you can imagine that's considered woo to prove that it's actually true. And one of the things that I do is like even visualizations, there's studies on how just visualizing can impact, or even I'll sometimes take people through a little like experiment of just imagine a lemon and all of a sudden they're salivating. I'm like, did you salivate? Probably about 90% do, some don't. So some people do, and I'm like, okay, well, do you have a limit? Like, why did you salivate? Just because I thought about it. Like, it's just, and there you go. There you
Yeah,
go.
I love that.
You just had, that's like perfect proof, an involuntary response to what you just thought about.
Totally going to use that. That is good.
Yes. Yeah. And it's amazing, but we kind of like dismiss, and I've been guilty of this too when I was younger, when I didn't know, I didn't realize like just how powerful my thoughts were. If I noticed things that were annoying, then I get really annoyed, and like it just kind of took me on a whole spiral. And I realized, wait, sometimes if I focus my energy on this, I feel a certain way, and other times if I focus my energy on things that I can control, I feel a certain way. And it's kind of like you start to see patterns on your
Yes.
own personal energy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people just aren't familiar with. Like, when I teach them these things, it's like all brand new to them. They're like,
Of
oh, like,
course.
they're kind of aware of energy and like what it feels like a little bit, but just like, wow, I can actually do that. It's like giving themselves permission almost a lot of times. And so I'm like, you can give yourself permission to feel as fertile as you want to feel, or to feel pregnant, or just, really embodying that. And so, like with pregnancy, they're like, well, how do you expect me to feel pregnant when I've never been pregnant before? And I'm like, okay, well, what would you imagine pregnancy to be like? And they're like, okay, well, I think I would kind of like waddle a little bit, or maybe like really support my tummy sometimes. And I'm like, okay, just kind of do that like in your home where you're comfortable in your own space. And it's just amazing, like you said, to see like it's involuntary, how they're just like, they just get into the rhythm of it so easy to embody it. And that's, that is awesome. And they can really start to feel like they're pregnant before they're physically pregnant, or feel like, their eggs are really healthy when they've always felt, not their best, or whatever it is, that we're working on. So, yeah, I was so excited when I was like, oh, she feels that way too. So it's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I really like, I love that you just said give yourself permission, because I think that's huge. I think that sometimes we think that we have to have certain circumstances in order to give ourselves permission to feel or get into a state of whatever it is. And that's not necessarily true. And I love that. I love that. And I think that that's one of the reasons why having a fertility coach is so important. So if people are interested in reaching out and working with you, how do you work with people and how can they find you?
Yeah, so I work with people in two different ways. I have, private coaching for those who, of course, the fertility journey is it's a very intimate, kind of sacred process. And so for those who want to just do it one-on-one, who need a lot of support, I'll offer that one-on-one support for them. But I do find that a lot of people like the kind of group aspect because it's very isolating. Like we know our heterosexual friends who are going through fertility or fertility treatments, but we don't know other gay couples or other queer couples. And so my group program is something that I get really like so jazzed up about because I do it like a small group, maybe up to like 5 couples. And so it's like instant friends all over the world. They're sharing their journeys with each other. And it's just like right out of the gate, they feel so much better knowing they're not alone on this journey.
Yeah.
But
It's interesting because
so
when you
people
do get
can,
into a group, you synchronize. You start to synchronize,
yes,
and what's the word? It's like a harmony. Like you start to harmonize
yeah,
with each other's mind.
yeah. And so even like when we're, when I think it's week 3, yes, it's week 3 when I bring up the spirit baby connection and I teach them that component, and they love sharing the experiences that each other is having with it. So it's you know, so one couple may say like, oh, Vanessa, like we just like the one story I shared with you that we experienced, with the ladybug. And then another couple may say like, oh, wow, we received like a little crystal from our baby. So it's neat to see them
That's
interact with each other.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I mean, I love there is such power in community, and I think that that is very important to have that support, and also have the support from people that are going through really what you're going through and understand you, because I think just having that component is a game changer.
Yes, absolutely. Um, oh, I was going to share. Sorry, I just remembered this one couple. They are in London, and they're all my clients are just so awesome. They're so, like you said, they're so like willing to just do whatever it takes, right? They're willing to do the work. And they they were really discouraged when they found me because they had gone through, I believe it was 3 IVF cycles. All of them failed. And they were just like, we're in so much debt. Like, how can we make, parenting a reality for us? And I was like, no worries, we're going to do this, we're going to find a way. And so I introduced them to the idea of having a known donor. And they're like, okay, yeah, I think we have someone who may be willing. Like, we'll have to talk to him. And knowing that they get to try in their own home, like the comfort of their own home. Because the one partner who's carrying, she was like, I felt like the medication was just too strong for my body. When we started out, the doctor was just really gung-ho on we had to do it this way. There were no other options. And, that's already like shutting down your body's own wisdom, right?
Yeah.
So she was like trying at home without medical intervention. She said, just feels so much better, so much, more natural. And they've just been having these little wins all throughout their journey. And so it's just like just little things like that. It's just so exciting. Like people don't know what options that they have if they're only told it can happen one way. So I love it.
Absolutely. And so for people who want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Yes, so you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at queerfertility.co. And then I have an amazing, I call it my soul community on Facebook. It's LGBTQ plus trying to conceive pregnancy and fertility. So that's a great place if you want to drop in whatever questions you have. I'm in there all the time answering questions. You get to meet other couples just like kind of cheering each other on. Like it's an awesome community.
I love it. Vanessa, it was such a pleasure having you on. I love talking to you, and I love the fact that you are a spirit baby medium as well, because it's just a topic that I love talking about. It's just so cool. And
Thank you so
I think
much.
that your work is really important and so needed. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Michelle.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.